Ding, ding. Tonight is a big night for President Trump. He's going to return to the campaign trail with a speech at the North Carolina State GOP convention. Newsmax will actually carry this speech live tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Do not miss this. So what's the impact going to be? Let's ask our panel. Jim DeMint is a former senator from South Carolina. He's also the author of the new novel, Satan's Dare. It's on sale now. We're also joined by best-selling author and political analyst Mark Halperin. You can catch his show Focus Group every weekend right here on Newsmax. Good morning to both of you. I like to always remind people that, Senator, you were inspired me when I was on my first tour of duty in Iraq when I read, actually second tour, when I read Saving Freedom, which was one of your other books. So I appreciate you, all the work you've been doing for that. Mark, I want to go to you first. President Trump will be making a lot more appearances in the coming months. Should Democrats be afraid? I mean, this is what they tried to do by squashing him on social media.
Well, I think Democrats continue to underestimate the influence the former president has on his followers. But I think what will scare them is if he talks more about the future than the past. This is going to be a theme throughout these upcoming speeches by President Trump, which is he focused on critiquing Joe Biden? Is he focused on unifying the Republican Party around issues? Or is he more focused on relitigating through his rhetoric what happened in 2020? And that is where most Republicans and Democrats I know who are pros are going to be watching tonight.
Yeah, and Senator, as you know, I mean, President Trump left office with a hugely high rating of within the GOP. They're excited for that. I'm excited for it. It's like, I love it. It's like a rock concert. So what about the rhinos, the establishment Republicans that we really have, I mean, they've been highlighted recently. Will this help or hurt turnout? I mean, what's going to be the conflict going forward on that?
Well, first, I agree with Mark that this is a great opportunity for the president to talk about the future, to contrast his positions on issues with what Biden is doing, which is a clear disaster from all domestic policies to foreign policies right now. And so he needs to talk about that rather than going back and even suggesting we can overturn the last elections. I like the idea that's going on around in a number of states to audit particular counties, because the majority of Americans, if you take the last two presidential elections, think there was some fraud. So we need to satisfy with some evidence of what's going on. But the president can talk about issues that are America believes in. I think what we're going to see is a lot of energy still behind Trump, as Mark says, and this will give the president and the country a chance to see if that energy is still there. And you ask about rhinos, I'm convinced that the more he shows himself, the more the rhinos will move back towards at least the middle of the party.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you know, some of Trump's political appointees are still coming under fire from the left. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is under investigation of the allegations that he pressured former employees to donate to conservative candidates. He was asked about it on Capitol Hill. Take a look for this.
Did you pay back several of your top executives for contributing to Trump's campaign by bonusing or rewarding them?
That's an outrageous claim, sir, and I resent it.
I'm just asking a question.
The answer is no.
Okay, so they're going after him because he's a Trump appointee. I mean, look, they go after everybody. They went after me. They went after a ton of other people. So, I mean, Mark, you know, what do we do with this?
I'm all for the First Amendment. I'm all for prosecutors exercising their roles in our society. They're essential. But the kind of leaking that's gone on against both Republicans and Democrats, where they claim there's an investigation, they claim here's where it's going, they know how the media will treat it. I think it's long been a dangerous thing, and we've seen a real uptick of it in just the last couple of weeks aimed against Republicans and Democrats. It's prosecutorial misconduct, and it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, Mark, I can tell by the inflection of your voice that you're just livid about. I'm just messing with you. But Senator, the issue that I have with this is, like Mark said, which was on point, which was that they use the media to go after people to create a narrative about, you know, pick one. And the next thing is just the sense of the investigation. The process becomes the punishment at some point. How do we have a secure nation if this is how we're using our prosecutorial wing?
Carl, you're bumping up against one of the most serious issues we have in the country today, and that's the media. You cannot have a free society, democratic types of elections, if people can't find out the truth. And the truth has been a huge casualty in what's happened in the media, particularly social media. And I think that the more formats we have like Newsmax, the more people like Mark have shows where they can try in an honest way to give people the facts. Again, we cannot live as a civilized, free society if you can be accused of something, tried in the media, found guilty without ever having any due process. So it's just a shame that major media networks, ABC, NBC, no longer value the truth in any way. So it's very frustrating, particularly as we look at the next couple of elections, of just wondering, how can we get the truth about candidates out to the voters so they can know what they're really voting for?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And the big issue is, like I put a quote up from an email of Fauci, and Instagram fact checked me. Said, this could be potentially misleading. That was their fact check. It's unbelievable. Mark Halperin, former Senator Jim DeMint, stay with us. We're going to be right back. But coming up, Biden made a bunch of concessions on infrastructure. Thank God. We'll tell you how he's caving to the GOP and whether or not it will make any difference. Stay tuned. On infrastructure, he gave up his drive to increase tax hikes for corporations, but now it may fail anyway because Democrats don't want to compromise on anything. So let's bring back our panel. Jim DeMint is a former senator from South Carolina. He's also the author of the new novel, Satan's Dare. It's on sale now. You can pick it up. I encourage you to. We're also joined by best-selling author and political analyst Mark Halperin. All right, so Mark, will this effort of Biden campaigned on bipartisanship, bringing people back together and bridging the gap, and now he's doing it, and the Democrats are like, nope, stop that.
Well, you've always had the best Joe Biden imitation in the game.
Thank you.
Look, right now, here's what the Democrats are strategizing. I don't know that they'll get it, but here's what they want. They want a $1 trillion new spending on infrastructure that they pass in a bipartisan way. And then have about $2.5 trillion that they do through reconciliation. And they think if they do that two-step, they can get Joe Manchin, they can get Senator Sinema to go along. So let's see how it plays out over the next couple of days. But that's what they're going for now.
All right, so Senator, you've been in this position before in the Senate. So how do these battles work? Take us through it.
Well, a lot of folks in the media miss how it really works, because what the Democrats do, and sometimes the Republicans will do it themselves to the conservatives, is they'll just introduce an outrageous bill. And then they'll bring in particularly some of the Republican rhinos and try to make it less bad so they can, just like with eliminating some increases in corporate taxes, that was probably a throwaway from the beginning, where they could just say, okay, we've made it better. We've got a concession from the Democrats, but they still have a multi-trillion-dollar spending. And Mark is right. They'll probably do it in two phases, where they have kind of a negotiated bipartisan, maybe $1 trillion bill where Republicans can claim victory, but then they'll come back and pass it all by themselves, another 2 or 3 trillion in reconciliation. So it's a game that most people miss, but they begin with an outrageous bill, and then the claim by Republicans is, hey, we made it less worse.
Yeah. Less bad. Yeah, I actually been saying that for years, is that the Republicans haven't caught on to this yet. The Republicans are like, hey, we should balance the budget. They don't do it because the Democrats are like, hey, we should spend $12 trillion on the Green New Deal or whatever it is. And then they come to the middle and they say, oh, we only spent $6 trillion. I mean, it's unbelievable. Mark Halperin, Senator Jim DeMint, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Have a great day.
Remember, folks, you can catch Mark's show, Focus Group, every weekend right here on Newsmax. But straight ahead, someone paid more than $1 million for a parking spot. It's a story you don't want to miss. But make sure you're watching President Trump on Newsmax TV live tonight. President Trump is giving one of his rare public speeches at the North Carolina Republican Convention, and Newsmax will carry the speech live, as we always intend to do. So start tuning in with our pre-show at 6 p.m. Eastern. President Trump will start sometime around 7 p.m. Eastern. If you text the word speech to 39747, Newsmax will send you a text alert for the exact time today. So text speech to 39747 now and watch President Trump live tonight on Newsmax. We will hear he has some big things to say. See you then. Live under a rock, you know that Democrats are pushing for a complete overhaul of Americans' elections. Chuck Schumer says he will push for a vote soon. Let's discuss this with our favorite left-right panel. Patrick Dornson blogs at radandfences.com. Ellis Hennigan is a columnist for Dow Jones Market Watch. He's also a New York Times best-selling author. Good morning to both of you. Patrick, I go to you first. Former Alabama Senator Doug Jones told MSNBC that there is Republican support for this bill. Watch this.
I do think that it is possible to get 10 votes. The Voting Rights Act was passed almost unanimously in the last Congress, the last time it was renewed. And so I think there's opportunities. And remember, folks, that this bill was passed initially with bipartisan support and it has been renewed with bipartisan support.
So the issue is this will actually federalize a lot of things that are enumerated to the states to do by the Constitution. You think the GOP is going to support that?
Well, if they do, any GOP senator or congressman that supports it is a dead man walking or a dead woman walking come the next election. Yeah. Figuratively, of course, yeah. But, you know, look, as you said, this is to federalize the elections. The Democrats want to make sure that they can control everything from Washington, about just like they want everything else controlled from Washington. And one of the problems that I see with this thing is, you know, they talk about automatically, you know, registering people to vote. Look, citizenship is not a passive activity, okay? If you want to register to vote, go register. You know, I don't like this idea of people just sitting around and then they want to mail in ballot and stuff. Get up off your hind end and go down to the polling place and vote.
So, Ellis, I imagine that I think I can know what you're going to say, but what do you think about this?
I'm in favor of democracy. I mean, I believe that the people ought to make the decisions about who our representatives are. We ought to make it easy for them to decide. Why on earth you'd want to throw up a lot of barriers in it to require all kind of unnecessary registrations and rules and limit the hours? I think we all ought to agree. We want people's opinions. This is what living in a democracy is, and we ought not to put up barriers. Now, a lot of people have been doing that, so we got to stop them.
Yeah, it's shocking that voting and gun rights are actually protected by the same Constitution, and you're for one but not the other. But Patrick, the U.S. Embassy, I want to go into this because the U.S. Embassy here is at the Vatican is flying the gay pride flag for the month of June. Now, look, you want to fly any flag you want, fine with me. But the red, white, and blue is the flag that represents all Americans, and that is what solely should be flown over our embassies. I mean, does this raise issues to you?
Of course it raises issues. You know, we're balkanizing this country. We're dividing ourselves into little groups. One month we're going to fly the Black Lives Matter flag. And another month we're going to have the gay pride flag. I mean, look, that flag, the stars and stripes, represents every one of us. It's the United States of America. Joe Biden says he wants unity. We should all agree on that. Look, I don't care what somebody wants to do in the privacy of their own home or their private lives. You know, as long as it don't scare the horses, I don't care. But this idea that we're going to have this balkanization of America where every little group's going to get its flag, what's next? Yeah. You know, I don't know if this country could ever stand up to a war.
Yeah, it is actually shocking. Ellis, I got to say, how does this make America a stronger country?
My God, you guys shop very easily, don't you? I never heard about this one flag rule, by the way. Government buildings all around the world and across our country, lots of flags, state flags and city flags and wounded warrior flags and missing POW flags. And listen, there are some values we stand for as a nation. I don't think we should be flying highly partisan flags, but you know what? We all agree on equal rights. We all agree on treating people decently. If some ambassador somewhere wants to fly a flag that encourages equal rights, why would we be against that? My God, don't we have bigger issues than that?
Wait, but
I agree.
So hold on a sec, Patrick. Ellis. So the American flag doesn't stand for equal rights, Ellis?
Well, of course it does, but that doesn't mean it's the only thing. We have a New York flag flying in government buildings in New York and city flags, all kind of flags. I'm gonna liberate both of you guys. There is no one flag rule. Let's keep the stars and stripes up there. And, you know, from time to time, if we want to celebrate great things about our country, let's go ahead and do that with confidence.
Well, Patrick, I mean, like, if we want to, the New York flag flies in New York. The United States flag flies on the United States Embassy in the Vatican. I mean, am I off here?
No, and I'm so happy that Ellis wants to make sure that the American flag keeps flying. That's just wonderful. Look, doesn't the State Department have anything better to do?
Hey, Patrick,
we're getting hacked.
Hey, Patrick,
wait a second, Ellis. I'll let you talk.
Stop that.
We're getting hacked. We're getting hacked.
Hold on. Let Patrick finish. Ellis, I'll give you.
I don't appreciate that.
Okay, Ellis doesn't appreciate that, Patrick.
Cut that out.
We're getting hacked by Russian gangsters. We got the Chinese breathing down our neck. COVID-19 was hatched in a lab. The media is finally figuring that one out. And the State Department's worried about flying the gay pride flag from an embassy at the Vatican or any other embassy. We better start getting our priorities right in this country, or our enemies are going to be walking all over us, and our kids are going to have to learn how to say, do you want fries with that in Mandarin Chinese?
Ellis, 15 seconds to you.
Yeah, there's no issue. I mean, it doesn't disturb anybody. No ambassador is worrying about it. We have some values we stand for in this country, and it's a wonderful thing to try to spread those values of democracy and equality and fairness and decency around the world. That is what America stands for, isn't it?
Yeah. That's what the American flag stands for. Patrick Dornson, Ellis Hennigan, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good seeing you guys.
I got to say, folks, I think the American flag says it all. We don't need any other flags. I told you so. Quite frankly, most of you watching the show also told everybody so. Fauci is a self-serving bureaucrat who played the game for glory, I guess. I have no idea why he does all this stuff. I mean, I cannot, well, actually, you know what? I can believe it. It looks right now, it looks like this dude knew. He knew from almost day one that the virus probably came from a lab in Wuhan, China. He knew that while he was at the NIH, that they were directing funding to an entity that funded this lab. And it looks like he lied to Congress about the gain-of-function research that he denied knowing anything about when Rand Paul pressed him on this just a few weeks ago.
We have not funded gain-of-function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, no matter how many times you say it. There was research.
We now know that Fauci's own emails seem to contradict his testimony. Oh, but check out this gem from the Wall Street Journal. From 2014 to 2019, the National Institutes of Health sent $3.4 million of your dollars to the Wuhan Institute of Virology through the nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance. It goes on to say that the NIH money was spent on researching bat coronaviruses, and it's likely that the WIV conducted gain-of-function research to make them more deadly and infectious. It seems to me he knew it. And we'll find out soon enough if he lied right to our faces, which I think he did. Or worse, he was willfully ignorant and gave the money to China and didn't even bother to check what they were doing with it or if they were doing what they said they were doing. Giving carte blanche money to China is like giving your 2-year-old a pile of candy, telling him not to eat it, and then leaving them in their room alone with it. What do you think would happen there? By the way, it looks like Trump was right this whole time. Just saying.
Investigation into whether the virus escaped from this lab in Wuhan. How active is that? And when
we're looking at it. A lot of people are looking at it. It seems to make sense. There is a lot of investigation going on, and we're going to find out.
Well, here's Fauci at the same press conference just 18 minutes later when he was asked about it.
Group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human.
But 2.5 weeks later, he said this to National Geographic. The scientific evidence is very, very strongly supporting that this was artificially or deliberately manipulated. Everything strongly indicates that this virus evolved in nature and then jumped species. Okay. We want the evidence. We want that evidence. Where is it? Nobody's shown us that. And then somehow we had a come to Jesus moment just 1 month ago. Fauci said this to PolitiFact on May 11th of this year.
No, I'm not convinced about that. I think that we should continue to investigate what went on in China. And the people who've investigated say it likely was the emergence from an animal reservoir that then infected individuals, but it could have been something else.
I'm sorry. You know what? Actually, I'm not sorry. I'm so angry about this. And you should be too, quite frankly. They used this virus to control us by instilling fear. That's what they did. Remember in late February when Nancy Pelosi stood in a crowded Chinese market in San Francisco and said, hey, you have nothing to fear. Come on down. Oh, by the way, if you're worried about where this virus came from, you're racist. But in January, a month before that, they had all the experts telling them that this was suspicious and appeared to be engineered in nature. Now, she is the third most powerful person in the world. She had all the information. Trust me, they had it. So what changed? They realized they could gain power with it. That's all. That's the only variable that changed here. It begs the question, what else did Fauci and his team know or have doubts about and didn't tell us? Well, I tell you, thanks to the recent Freedom of Information dump, masks. He flip-flopped on this a bunch. And just like I've been saying for, I don't know, like a year now, all these store-bought masks, these homemade masks, these face shields and cloth things, they don't work. It's like putting up a chain-link fence to keep out mosquitoes. If you don't believe me, Fauci said it himself in one of his leaked emails. That's just what's in the unredacted stuff that we don't that we have. Now, Fauci's job was never to craft policy. But somewhere along the line, he became this de facto architect of all things COVID. His only job, one job, was to inform the administration what the scientific reality was. That's it. To tell the truth, folks. That's all he had to do. What is evident from these emails is that it appears he didn't do any of that. He told us one thing and then privately discussed something totally different. He clearly had his own agenda. I don't know why. Look, I think the two things we can take away from this whole thing is, one, the government takes your money and lights it on fire and flushes the ashes down the toilet. Or worse, they give it to China so they can research bat flu. And two, they and their media propaganda arm almost always lie to you. Almost always. It's pretty evident about everything. Guys, this type of nonsense doesn't sit well with Americans. And I always like to remind my viewers on this show that those who practice tyranny, listen. Because America did, in fact, start a revolution over a 2.5% tax hike in a breakfast beverage. Keep that in mind. So let's bring in Texas Congressman Michael Burgess. He was one of the first members of Congress to spot the dangers of COVID. He's actually a doctor and a legislator. We love his opinion here because it is uniquely relevant. Congressman, how are you this morning?
I'm well, Carl. I hope you're well also.
You know what? I'm winning this morning. It's a bright Saturday morning. It's the day after Freedom Friday. So I got to say, what do you make of these emails?
You know, there's so much. First off, there's so much there. It is hard to plow through it all. And look, Dr. Fauci will need to come and talk to the various committees in Congress. I did actually get the Democratic chairwoman of our Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee to admit that we needed to do more investigation into the origin of this virus. Previously, they had steadfastly refused. And of course, that same day, you had the president saying, well, we're going to undertake a 90-day review. I welcome all that. That's good. It's perhaps a year late, but something this order of magnitude bad, you need to know all you can about it. Mm-hmm. And the landscape has changed and evolved during the 14 months that we've been enmeshed in this. And I certainly do not fault someone for saying something one day and getting new information and saying something different on another day. But on the other hand, when you've used the public health aspects of this virus to basically put us under martial law in this country, you better believe there's some people who are going to be asking some tough questions.
Yeah, but Congressman, we see this all the time. I mean, look, he went in front of Senator Rand Paul, and what it appears to have just blatantly lied to him. I mean, okay, he testifies in front of Congress. It's, a little bit stressful and everything like that. And sure, his books are being pulled off of pre-order, and as they rightfully should be, because the guy's a fraud. What happens? What happens at that point? Do we have any recourse of people like this? We need to send a message to the American people saying, look, this type of bureaucratic nonsense where we take over your lives and destroy your freedoms because of a whim and some political ideology, it can't be tolerated.
It's number one, there are consequences for lying to Congress, even if you're not sworn in under oath. As some people have found out, I think there was a famous picture a few years ago who was involved in some steroid investigations. You were not allowed to lie to Congress. There is that. The other thing is, reputational damage is clearly significant, as you referenced the ability to peddle your memoirs. But look. Dr. Fauci is a smart individual. I've worked with him for 20 years. He knows how to testify before Congress, and he should welcome the opportunity to tell his side of the story. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, the story has to be told. This has been so